Hey, this is Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society Podcast, reminding you that this podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the other great podcasts on the network at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, the slayer of non-threats, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. Before we get started, let me tell you about GlockTriggers.com. Love them or hate them, the one thing you know about Glock pistols is that they are reliable. Out of the box, to the range, absolutely reliable. It's what makes them so popular with competitors, law enforcement, military, and responsible armed citizens. But one of the drawbacks is that stock trigger. Well, Jeff Wilson and the folks at Glock Triggers asked themselves, how do we make them better while maintaining reliability? Using stock parts as their foundation, they've refined the interaction of the metal parts to give you smoother take-up, a cleaner break, and reduced over-travel without sacrificing safety or reliability. Recommended and used by people like Bob Vogel, Travis Haley, and Ken Hackathorn, Glock Triggers custom trigger kits come with a lifetime warranty and a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. Visit them today at GlockTriggers.com and check out the Edge, the Vogel, the Skimmer, the Guardian, and the Hackathorn trigger systems. Use the promo code from this podcast, USC20, and save 20% off of your entire order. GlockTriggers.com. The highest quality drop-in trigger system for your Glock. Our special guest today is Dylan Bissman from Snow Hill, Maryland. Dylan, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little about yourself. You just turned 16 last fall, right? You haven't got your driver's license yet, I understand.
Yes, sir. That would be about a week.
Awesome. So you were a sophomore in high school?
Yes, sir.
And you are one of IDPA's youngest master class shooters. I noticed you're a master in CDP, ESP, SSP, which I assume is the universal, and in CCP, and you're an expert in bug. How long have you been shooting IDPA?
I've been shooting IDPA since I was about 9. I started a very local match in Virginia, and I just at 12 I just turned 12 when I was my first state match. So I went to the state match with my MMP 9, which is my first gun, and I won high junior there, and then that's how I got started.
Very nice. So your dad is in law enforcement, I understand. So I'm guessing your interest in shooting and in guns comes from him.
Yeah, I was about 8, and he was always the hunting, and I became a junior hunter's educational instructor when I was probably around 8 or 9, and I just helped out there. And one of the range masters at the police sheriff's office, they invited me and my father to go shooting at a local IDP range when I was about 9 or 10, and I just started shooting there, once a month, once every 2 weeks, and I guess I fell in love with it, but it wasn't really until I was 12 or 13 where I really started, trying to become someone or, to become good.
So after you went to that state match, what was that experience like? The first time that you got out there in an organized match and were actually competing with other shooters?
it was one of the experts told me to trust my gun because I was putting 6 or 7 rounds into every target, trying to hit the down zero.
I was doing that in my 40s, so don't feel bad. That's very cool. So what was so the first sanctioned match that was that the Maryland match or was that Virginia?
That was the Delaware State match.
Delaware State.
Yes, sir. About 20. I think it was about 2015, I believe.
Now you've mastered in those different categories. What is your favorite? You started out with the M&P 9, so I'm assuming you started in SSP.
Yes, sir.
At what point did you decide to pick up to move on to CDP or CCP and then on to bug? What was the, rather than continue to shoot at in master at SSP, why pick up the 45 or why pick up the the limited capacity CCP or the bug gun?
I got a Glock 17 because my dad just became a deputy sheriff, and they were shooting the Glock 21. So I actually liked the Glock 21. So I didn't shoot it, but I picked up the Glock 17, bought one for myself, put a mag wheel on it, started shooting ESP. Then when I was 14, I the guys at the local range here in Worcester County, they shoot the Nighthawk Custom single stack in 45. So when I was probably around 13, I was going to buy it myself. I went around it in the correct way, and I finally learned it wasn't like the Glock. But through that, with all the problems we had with that, being me trying to put it together myself, I began communicating with Nighthawk. And when I was about 14, I asked them to be my sponsor, which was my actual big first sponsor, was Nighthawk Custom. So I got my single stack up and running, and took me probably 7 months, and that was the first gun I became a master in CDP. And just recently, I got a 9mm double stack for ESP with them.
So that's at 14, you're asking a company like Nighthawk to sponsor you. That's pretty amazing. What, you had already become a master in SSP at that point?
No, sir. I was an expert.
You were an expert. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that process like, and what motivated you to say, hey, Nighthawk is the one for me, and I'm going to, because that's a young person, that's difficult to, I would think, for most people, to step out and kind of sell yourself and say, hey, I want to represent your brand.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of prayer involved for me. Just to have the courage to ask them. But the great thing about Nighthawk is they're a very religious company, and Mark Stone, very nice guy. So he had a 14-year-old coming asking him for a sponsorship who was also religious. So I know why they sponsored me, but they did, and now I'm a master, so it all worked out for them, I guess.
Sounds like it worked out for everybody.
Yeah.
What's the bug gun? What are you competing with, and what made you decide to try bug?
There was the IDPA Chesapeake Cup, which was the year I tried out for it, which I got expert in bug. I was shooting my dad's Glock 43, and I wasn't able to go. So this coming year, I qualified for the match. And this coming year, I was already a master in CDP. So they added the CDP division to make it all 9 rounds. All divisions with 9 rounds could compete. So I picked up my CDP gun, and I actually won second overall at that match just recently.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So what are some of your other interests? What are you into at school? Aside from just going to class, what else are you involved in?
Well, I've been going to church a lot, and I'm very religious. I want to become a minister. And so I'm homeschooled. I'm going to a
okay.
private Catholic school, which I homeschool through, but I'm actually Protestant, but it's pretty much the same thing. And that's
Well,
where but it was the homeschooling, and I started going to church with my cousin. And after I became very religious, I started doing great stuff with my gun. Draws below 1 second, reloads below 1 second, kind of thing. And the USPSA have really picked up for me ever since I became religious.
so what's the typical week like balancing schoolwork and practice and preparation for IDPA?
Well, today I practiced a lot with my open gun, which was from Nighthawk. I haven't really done any IDPA stuff within the last 2 weeks, but I'm training for the Delaware State match, the IDP Nationals, and I believe the Maryland match as well.
So are you practicing every day? Is it how is that balance where I've talked to a couple of other people like Ashton Lawrence and Leon Dunlevy, and they're in public school, so it's a little bit different. You have a little more freedom to work out your practice schedule, I assume. So what's that practice schedule like for you? Is it lots of dry fire? Is it how much live fire are you doing? How did you get from the 9-year-old kid at the local match to 5 years later being a master?
I did a lot of dry fire. I put a bunch of targets up in my room that are stayed there, and I just dry fire all day. In between dry firing sessions, I do my homework, and I just dry fire and dry fire. The only two things that really matter to me are guns and God. That's pretty much all I do. So I just dry fire. During the winter, I lose a lot of skill because of the range isn't open. So we actually have a big farm, about 1,000-acre century farm that we can shoot on. So there isn't really too much live fire during the winter because it's so cold here in Maryland. And usually during the spring, fall, and summer, I do most of my live fire. But for me, it's all about just keeping the reloads, the draws, the grip, the sight picture, all that consistent. And then live fire for me is more during the local matches where I go to probably like twice a week.
Gotcha.
Not twice a week, but every other week.
So basically, lots of dry fire, and then the local match every couple of weeks to sort of confirm that your dry fire is getting you where you need to be. And then do you adjust your dry fire based on the results of those local matches, or you just keep doing what you're doing and keep trucking on?
I just keep doing what I'm doing and keep trucking on, basically. For me, I don't really have to really do too much training. It's more of like an overall thing for me. So as long as my dry fire stays correct and if I pull the trigger, my sights don't move, for me that's perfect. And everything else just kind of falls into place for me. I just kind of let God rely on all that stuff, and it kind of works out perfectly for me.
So how many matches a year have you been attending since you got serious about competitive shooting? How many, not just your bi-monthly local matches, but how many sanctioned matches and major matches are you attending every year?
None during the winter. There's not many matches around here. I probably go around 7, I would say, USPSA and IDPA together. I'll go to the IDPA Nationals, I went 2017 and 18. Those are my first real matches, national. And I kind of balance it between USPSA and IDPA. So the Delaware, the Marylands, and Virginia, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Got a memory or a favorite stage or a favorite match that you look back on and you say that was a lot of fun, or that was really crazy or weird, or I really hope I never see that stage again kind of memory? Anything from the last 4 or 5 years that stands out in your mind shooting IDPA?
Probably the DQ traps, I would say. That's just crazy when people do that, but those are kind of the stages that really stick out to me. Probably my favorite stages are the ones with the stars, which you don't really see that during the state matches. But I would say Nationals 2017. It would have been a very fun stage if it wasn't raining so much because it was so muddy. But
right.
Basically, you had to start from retention, draw, shoot retention, you come back through a door and shoot some other targets with a swinger and hit a moving hostage. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, that range doesn't drain real well when it rains real hard down here. So I understand completely. I shot the Lone Star Championship that same year. I didn't get to Nationals that year, but I got to the Lone Star, which was 2 weeks later, and they had basically left those stages up and made a few minor changes to to kind of simplify them. So I remember the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Very cool. What's the goal for you next? What are your, like I said, master in these different classes? Are you trying? Is the next goal to get bug master, or is it like a national division champion, or what's on the horizon? What are you shooting for?
I'm shooting for probably ESP DM. That's my next one. I know that's probably a big step, but I hear the world shoots just like the nationals, so I'll be planning on going to that this year as well. I wouldn't say I have a lot of points, but I'm a junior, so IDPA treats juniors really well. So I'll be going to that, hopefully.
You mentioned DQ traps. I do want to ask you, have you ever DQ'd? They say it's not a matter of if it happens, it's a matter of when. Has it ever happened to you yet?
Twice. One during an IDP local match. I believe it's probably around 12. I just started shooting and I just got confused with the stages, and it was a U. So U targets went around the range, and you had to shoot close targets coming down. Then you had to shoot targets going to the right, and then you had to shoot targets backing up. And then we didn't have fault lines. So, I didn't understand that if you saw the target, you necessarily couldn't shoot the target. And that's pretty much the DQ trap I was talking about during the local match.
Right.
And then next DQ was at Area 8. It was a good experience because I know that once you get DQ'd, you're not going to do it again. That's for sure.
Right. It's a lesson learned. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got a new set of questions that I've started asking that haven't hit anybody with yet. This is a little something I like to call pick your poison. So I'm going to give you several one or the other kind of questions. You have to choose one or the other and explain why you prefer one of the two choices. So if your choice is to shoot standards on the very first stage of a match or the very last stage, which do you prefer and why?
I would probably say probably at the end. Now I've warmed up with the running, and standing still and just shooting isn't really my thing. So I'd probably say during the last end of the match, the one hand, left hand, standing still, more towards the end of the match for me.
Gotcha. You just sort of answered another one I was going to ask you. Which would you prefer? Targets moving or you moving?
Open targets, me moving. That's
right.
Yeah. I like the stages where you can just pull the trigger as fast as you can. I like the stages where you have to, close targets and far targets, where you can just shoot as fast as you can. Then you have to take like a 50-yard shot. For me, that's kind of where I'm at. For me.
Okay. If you had your choice, would you prefer? That leads into this next one perfectly. A wide open burner stage with no non-threats and no barrel. Everything's completely wide open, but the targets are between 20 and 25 yards. or lots of non-threats really close, like inside of 10 yards?
I'd probably say lots of non-threats really close. I can shoot pretty tight groups pretty fast, so it really depends on how close they are. If you make them really close, it's fine. I just like lots of movement for me.
Gotcha.
Weaving in and out, it's for me that's a lot of fun. I like moving and shooting.
All right, you're planning on going to Worlds, so this one will be apropos. Let's say you don't have enough points at for Worlds to choose your what day you shoot, and your only choice is to shoot all 16 stages on one day. Do you do it in one day, or do you say, you know what, I'll wait till next year?
I do it all in one day.
You're 16.
Yeah, I mean, drink lots of water, bring energy bars, and just do it in one day. I did that exact same thing at the Nationals, shot it all in one day, and it worked out for me. So
very cool. All right, you are a master in CDP and CCP. If you could only shoot one, CDP or CCP, which would it be?
Probably CDP. Yeah, well, I mean, Nighthawk makes CCP guns, but CDP for me, it's just a lot of fun. You got a full-size gun that's 45, doesn't have any recoil, and just unbelievably accurate. Where I like the 5-inch barrel and green fiber optic, and you can just blaze down stages with a 45.
You've got a stage. You've got one of these stages where you start in front of a wall, and the stage is basically a choice right off the bat. The buzzer goes off. You can go left or you can go right, and it doesn't matter. You can complete the stage going either direction. Which direction do you go? Which way are you most comfortable with?
Probably going to the left, because I like my reloads running to the right. But if I don't have to go back if I don't have to go back the other way, probably I'd go right. I like shooting to the right around targets, but I always make my reloads running to the right, or running back, or running forward. Now, I try to never reload to the left.
Good idea. That'll help you avoid the DQ, definitely. All right, last one. Being in Maryland, you talked earlier about the weather in the winter and not being able to live fire or go to matches as much. And you went to nationals, so you've seen what the weather's like shooting a match in the South. If you had your choice, do you go shoot in 30 degrees or do you go shoot in 100 degrees? Freezing cold or scorching hot? Which do you prefer?
You can get cold. You can get hot, but you cannot get cold. So I would probably say 30-degree weather. I've shot in 10 or about 20, 15-degree weather, and you don't need pro grip when it's that cold. You can get hot, but you cannot get cold. That's for sure. I would go with the cold.
All right, as we kind of wrap this up, what is it about IDPA that is fun for you? Why do you love IDPA? And you've clearly devoted a lot of effort to getting good at your craft and becoming a masterclass shooter, and with the goal of becoming a DM at such a young age. Why do you keep shooting IDPA? What is it you love about it that keeps you coming back?
I got a lot of friends in IDPA. Definitely the people. Both sports have great people, but the main thing is when I was at the 2017 Nationals, I was about 7 seconds away from Isaac Hamilton, who won first junior. I was 14, and I shot a 1911 45 Nighthawk custom with downgraded ammo in ESP division. I placed 7 seconds away from the high junior. Sadly, that came down to a miss on a target, and I'm thankful he won. But then the next year, I got my chance, and I won with my Nighthawk 9mm double stack, and just achieving high IDPA national junior for me was just what keeps me coming back. Well,
Dylan, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate you taking the time and I hope you do make it to Worlds. I'm hoping I'll get there either as a shooter or as just to get down there and meet some folks, and I hope I get a chance to meet you and your dad.
Thank you.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.